going on, guys? Gray Disciple back with another gameplay. You know, the other night I was thinking about, if I told you my history in gaming, maybe it would explain why I am the way I am and why I enjoy video games so much. So, sit back, relax, and I'll tell you a story. You know, I grew up in a house where electronics weren't really that big of a thing. The very first system that we had was an Atari. It was my eldest brother. He's 4 years older than me. He got an Atari for Christmas. And we hooked it up to our only TV in our house. It was a 13-inch black and white tube television. Now, it's not because that was the only thing that was available on the market. It was just because we didn't really watch TV that much as a family. And I remember hooking up this Atari or watching my dad and my brother do it. You know, there were these two little screws on the back of the TV. You would loosen them up, and then the Atari had this adapter with these little hooks, and you'd slide them underneath the screws, and then you tighten the screws, and somehow the signals would cross, and boom, you could play the game. Atari joystick, I mean, it was one stick, one button. The games were nothing special, but at the time, it was remarkable, all right? It was more of a novelty, though. We had a couple of games. I remember one was called, I think, Moonwalker. You know, the car, it would move left to right. It was more like a scrolling screen, and it would shoot. And then the other one was the one with the cowboys, you know, on either side of the cactus, and they each shot a bullet, and it could bounce off the walls, and you try to hit the other guy. They were fun, but, you know, nothing special. You know, fast forward a couple of years, my second eldest brother, he's 2 years older than me, he got a Nintendo. It was the last day of school. I think he was in 5th grade. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he had saved up some money, and the agreement was he would pay for half and my parents would pay for the other half, and boom, he got a Nintendo. Brought that home, hooked it up to the TV. At this point, we had a 15-inch color TV. Yeah, moving up in the world. And I watched him play Mario Brothers for hours. And of course, I'm sitting there as a little kid begging, please let me play, please let me play. And I would get on there and have a good time. And a lot of you may not have ever played a Nintendo or an Atari or some of the early generation consoles. You couldn't save your progress in the game. So when you sat down to play, you had to complete the whole game or start over. Oh my goodness. I remember on Nintendo, we used to play Excite Bike, Contra. Man, Contra was like the game. I loved this one game we had called Atari Warriors. It was a 2-player game. A lot of people never played it, but I used to love that game. And there was Mega Man, but the turning point for me was Zelda. Zelda was where I really fell in love with gaming. It was the first RPG. You could beat it in 4 hours, but it had puzzles in it. It was great. My personal first gaming system was not one that you could plug into the TV. It was the SEGA GameGear. I really wanted a SEGA Genesis, and I don't know if there was just some special deal on the GameGear, and that's why my parents got it for me one Christmas over the Genesis, but I loved it nonetheless. You know, it took 6 AA batteries, and man, those batteries did not last very long. I used to play, I think it was Joe Montana Football, Sonic the Hedgehog, and there was this ninja game called Shinobi. And then I had a baseball game that I loved. I loved this baseball game. And you could save game on the Game Gear if you knew what you were doing. And what ruined it for me, and when I stopped playing this, it was because my brother got on my Game Gear and played a baseball game and erased my progress. And I had like 115 wins consecutively. And once he did that, I never wanted to play it again. I was a little kid, man. I was so mad. But then I moved up to the SEGA Genesis, and I think I was in junior high when I got the SEGA Genesis, and at this point I had a TV in my room that I had bought with my own money. And I played Sonic the Hedgehog, of course. There was this game called Nemo and Echo the Dolphin, X-Men, Golden Axe. Probably my favorite game to play was NBA Jam, which was like a 2v2 basketball game. My buddies would come over and we would play for hours. I love that game. And then at the same time I had a Genesis, I bought a Grafix 16. And not many people know what a Grafix 16 is, but Grafix had a couple of games that you could play in the arcade that Sega or Nintendo or Super NES, they didn't carry. Like they had this game called Splatterhouse. Man, I loved Splatterhouse. You're this guy wearing this hockey mask and you get this big wood plank and go around and you just whack things. Oh gosh. And they had another game called Legendary Axe, which you could play in the arcade. And there was this one particular one, it was called Final Lap. It was, I think, the only race car game on the TurboGrafx 16, and you could save your progress. And this was a true RPG. I mean, it took probably 30 to 40 hours worth of gameplay to beat the game, and I fell in love there. Fast forward another year or two, my brother, who's 2 years older than me, got an N64. I never really played with the Nintendo 64 that much, but every once in a while I'd jump on because even though he bought these systems, he never played them. He wasn't a gamer. He just liked the novelty of having them, you know? And he got this game called Link. It was an open world RPG, and I really enjoyed playing it. It was about this time where, you know, friends started changing. Some veered more towards sports, and some, you know, still stayed into the gaming scene. And of course, I liked both, but I always liked gaming. And I got a PS1, PlayStation 1. I veered off towards PlayStation. And the PS1, I remember Resident Evil, Tomb Raider, Final Fantasy VII. I had a couple buddies, we'd get together and we'd play. Oh my gosh, so much fun. And then came PlayStation 2. PlayStation 2, you know, I was older now, college years, and I still played in the Resident Evil genre, and Grand Theft Auto showed its head, and I loved all the Grand Theft Auto games. And then God of War, of course. And then came PS3. Now keep in mind, through all of this, I did not know what online gaming was. I didn't have a clue. It wasn't until it was a Christmas season. I had a buddy. Now we both had kids. We're both married. We both had kids. They were really young. This was like 6-7 years ago. And he talked about how I should get an Xbox 360 so we could play together. And I'm like, well, I can just come over to your house if you want to play together. And he's like, no. You can stay at your house. I can stay at my house, and we can connect the systems. And I was like, you're kidding. So the next day I go out and I bought an Xbox 360. You know, I'm older, I have money. So I just went to the store and I bought an Xbox 360. And I still had my PlayStation 3. And I bought it and I got to my house, I hooked it up, and I was like, all right, what do I do? How can we play? He's like, well, you got to get online. And I was like, well, my computer's on. He's like, no, you got to connect to the Wi-Fi. I was like, you didn't tell me I had to buy a Wi-Fi from Walmart. He's like, no, you connect to the Wi-Fi. And I was so confused. I did not get this. He's like, no. Wi-Fi is your internet. I was like, I'm not going to run a cord from my office all the way to my living room. He's like, no, you buy a router and it sends out a signal and your machine will pick it up. And dude, I was so confused. I did not get it. All right. So eventually I go to the store, I get a router, I set it up, and boom, there it is. My system's picking up this signal from the internet, and I'm like, oh my goodness, what is going on here? People are gonna rob me. They're gonna steal my information. I didn't know what to think. He's like, all right, so we got to get online and send each other invites. And I was like, okay. So I get online, and I was like, well, it says I gotta pay. And so I'm like, now I gotta pay to play with you? I was like, what is going on? I feel like I'm getting ripped off. So I pay, and Xbox gives me the gamer tag, tallest bus. All right. and I didn't know. I was like, so this is who I'm gonna be. I'm gonna be tallest bus for the rest of my life. But okay, we're gonna stop right here. I'll make a note of this, and I'll pick it up with me changing my gamer tag and on into my history with Black Ops 1, alright? So I hope you guys enjoyed the gameplay and the commentary. You got anything to say, let me know down below. Like the video, of course, and as always, subscribe for more in the continuation of the story. Have a good one, guys. I'll talk to you soon.